Have you ever wondered why silence is so powerful? Why does it have the ability to make you feel uncomfortable? Yet at the same time, it can be incredibly liberating. Silence is not empty. It is filled with power. It is in the quiet moments where we often discover the most about ourselves and the world around us. We live in a world that is constantly filled with noise, the constant buzz of technology, the never-ending chatter, the demands of the outside world. They all drown out the voice inside our own heads. But it's in the silence that we reconnect with our true selves. Let's face it, we fear silence. We fear the stillness, the quiet. It challenges us, forces us to look inward, to confront our thoughts, our emotions, and the things we often try to avoid. In a world that glorifies constant activity, silence can feel like a void, an emptiness, a gap we must fill. We've been conditioned to believe that silence means something is wrong. That silence equates to boredom, discomfort, or worse, loneliness. But here's the truth. Silence is not something to be feared. It's something to be embraced. Silence holds power. It is the canvas upon which our thoughts and creativity come to life. It is the space between words where meaning is born. Without silence, words are meaningless. Without silence, there is no room for reflection, for growth, for peace. Silence is the foundation of understanding. It is the silence between breaths that gives life its rhythm. The moments when we stop talking, stop acting, and simply be I are the moments that often lead us to our greatest breakthroughs. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you found clarity in moments of stillness? How many times have you heard the truth in the quiet moments? When the noise stops, when the world slows down, that's when the truth rises to the surface. In silence, we hear our inner voice. We hear the truth of who we are, what we want, and where we need to go. In silence, we find our purpose. It's easy to get lost in the noise of life. We fill our days with distractions, with endless chatter, with constant activity. We think that in order to be productive, we must always be doing something. But silence teaches us that we don't always have to be busy to be productive. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to simply be still. In stillness, we give ourselves permission to rest, to recharge, and to reconnect with our deeper selves. In silence, we allow our minds to settle, our hearts to heal, and our spirits to grow. We often associate silence with isolation. The idea of being alone in silence can be terrifying, especially in a world where connection is sought through social media, emails, and endless conversation. But here's the truth. Silence is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness comes from a sense of disconnection, from the feeling that no one understands or sees you. Silence, on the other hand, is about connection to yourself, to your thoughts, to your spirit. Silence allows you to hear the whispers of your heart, the voice of your soul, and the wisdom that lies within you. Think about the power of a single moment of silence. It has the ability to change everything. A pause before an answer, a breath before a decision, a silence before a revelation. In the quiet moments, we make our most important choices. In the stillness, we find our deepest insights. It is in the silence that we are often able to step outside of the chaos and truly see things for what they are. In silence, we gain perspective. We live in a world that tells us we must always be talking, always be doing, always be active. But what happens when we stop? What happens when we step back and allow silence to fill the space? We start to see things clearly. We start to feel things deeply. We start to understand ourselves better. and we start to understand the world around us in ways we never could before. In silence, we begin to hear the whispers of truth, the quiet nudges that guide us toward our true purpose. Now, let's talk about how silence can be used as a tool. In conflict, silence is one of the most powerful weapons you have. When we argue or fight, the instinct is often to speak louder, to drown out the other person's voice, to fill the air with our own opinions and perspectives. But what if, in those moments, you chose silence instead? What if you allowed the other person to speak, to express themselves fully, while you simply listened? In silence, we give others the space to be heard, to be understood, and to feel validated. And in turn, we allow ourselves the opportunity to understand, to process, and to make better decisions. Silence also has the power to reset the mind. In a world where we are constantly bombarded by external stimuli, messages, notifications, alerts, our minds are in a constant state of overdrive. We are constantly thinking, constantly reacting. But when we allow ourselves to experience silence, we give our minds the chance to reset. We allow our thoughts to settle, to slow down. In silence, the noise of the world fades away, and we can hear our true thoughts. The power of silence also extends to the way we communicate. We often think that communication is all about talking, about filling the space with words. But some of the most powerful forms of communication happen in silence. A look, a gesture, a pause before a response. These moments speak volumes. Silence allows us to communicate on a deeper, more emotional level. It creates space for empathy, for understanding, and for connection. Silence is also an incredible tool for self-awareness. How often do you sit in silence with yourself? How often do you allow yourself to be alone with your thoughts, without the distractions of the outside world? In silence, we confront ourselves. We face our fears, our doubts, our insecurities, and it is only when we face these things head-on that we can truly overcome them. Silence forces us to be honest with ourselves, to acknowledge the things we often try to hide. And it is in that honesty that we find the strength to grow. If we truly understood the power of silence, we would use it more often. We would use silence to connect with others, to listen deeply, to reflect, and to heal. Silence is not empty. It is full of potential. It is the space in which all things are created. Without silence, there is no room for thought, no room for growth, no room for peace. The next time you find yourself in a moment of silence, don't run from it. Don't fill it with distractions or noise. Instead, embrace it. Let silence fill you. Let it guide you. Let it empower you. Because it is in the silence that you will find your truest self. The next time you feel overwhelmed, take a moment of silence. The next time you feel lost, take a moment of silence. The next time you feel the urge to speak, pause and let the silence do the talking. Because silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of power. What if I told you that control is an illusion? That everything you think you have power over, everything you believe you can shape and mold with your will, is nothing more than a mirage. You see, we have been sold a lie. We've been conditioned to believe that if we just try hard enough, if we plan every step, if we micromanage every detail, we can control our destiny. But that's not how life works. Control is a myth. We like to think that we are the architects of our own lives, that we can bend reality to our will. We set goals. We make plans. We calculate every move as if life itself were a puzzle that can be solved with precision and strategy. We hold on tight to the reins, never wanting to let go, never wanting to admit that maybe, just maybe, we aren't the ones in charge. We control our actions, we control our choices, but at the bigger picture, that's outside our control. And that, my friend, is where true freedom begins. Think about the things in life that you can't control. You can't control the weather. You can't control other people. You can't control the future, no matter how much you plan for it. There's always something beyond your grasp, something that slips through your fingers, no matter how tightly you try to hold on. And that's okay, because it's in accepting that lack of control that we find peace. The moment you stop pretending that you can control everything, you begin to experience life as it's meant to be: messy, unpredictable, and full of possibility. We crave control because it gives us a sense of security. It makes us feel safe. The idea that we can predict and dictate every outcome in our lives provides comfort. But comfort is the enemy of growth. When we hold on too tightly to control, we stifle our ability to adapt, to evolve, and to experience the beauty of life's unpredictability. Growth doesn't happen when you have everything planned out. It happens when you step into the unknown, when you release your grip on the illusion of control and trust in the process. Think about it. How many times have you tried to control a situation only to find that things didn't go the way you expected? How many times have you worried, stressed, and agonized over something that was ultimately out of your hands? The truth is, life doesn't care about your plans. Life doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't bend to your will. Life just is. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll stop fighting against the tide and start moving with it. This doesn't mean that you should give up responsibility. It doesn't mean that you should stop making decisions or taking action. What it means is that you need to let go of the belief that you have control over everything. You have control over your responses, your attitudes, and your choices. But the outcomes of your efforts, those are not yours to control. There's a freedom in letting go, a freedom in accepting that you cannot control everything. It's in that acceptance that you find true peace. When you release the need to control every detail, you allow yourself to experience life without the constant weight of expectation and fear. You stop living in the future, constantly planning and preparing for what might happen, and start living in the present, fully immersed in what is. Control is an illusion because it creates a false sense of certainty. When we believe we can control everything, we start to fear uncertainty. We fear the unknown because it's not predictable. It's not safe. But in truth, the unknown is where all the magic happens. It's where the breakthroughs occur. It's where you meet the people who will change your life, where you discover parts of yourself you never knew existed, where the most unexpected and beautiful moments unfold. When you try to control everything, you close yourself off from the infinite possibilities that life has to offer. Think about how much energy you waste trying to control things. The stress, the anxiety, the constant overthinking, it's exhausting. But when you stop trying to control every outcome, when you release the need for everything to go according to your plan, you free up space for new opportunities, new experiences, and new growth. You allow yourself to be open to what comes next, instead of trying to force life into a mold that isn't meant for it. Control is also a trap because it feeds into perfectionism. Perfectionism is rooted in the idea that you must control every aspect of your life in order to avoid mistakes or failures. But mistakes and failures are where growth happens. Perfection is the enemy of progress. If you're always focused on controlling every detail, you're not allowing yourself to fail. And it's through failure that you learn, adapt, and evolve. Control makes you play it safe, but life isn't safe. It's unpredictable. It's wild. And that's what makes it worth living. You can control your efforts. You can control your mindset. You can control your decisions and your actions, but you cannot control the outcome. And that's where the beauty lies. When you let go of the need to control the outcome, you open yourself up to the unexpected joys, the lessons, and the discoveries that come with uncertainty. You stop living in fear of what might happen and start living in excitement for whatever comes your way. Let's talk about fear for a moment. Fear is often born out of the desire for control. We fear the unknown because we don't know how to control it. We fear failure because we don't want to lose control. But when you stop seeing life as something to control and start seeing it as something to experience, the fear dissipates. Fear only holds power when you try to control things you cannot control. When you let go of that illusion, fear loses its grip on you. Control also isolates us. When we believe we can control everything, we start to believe we must do everything ourselves. We stop trusting others. We stop delegating. We stop asking for help. But the truth is, we are not meant to do everything alone. Life is about collaboration. It's about connection. When you let go of control, you allow others to step in and support you. You open the door for teamwork, for shared experiences, and for mutual growth. The first step in letting go of the illusion of control is to acknowledge that you cannot control everything. That's liberating. It's a weight lifted off your shoulders. And once you accept this truth, you can stop fighting against the current and start moving with it. You'll start to trust that even in the unknown, you are exactly where you're meant to be. You'll stop looking for certainty in an uncertain world and start finding joy in the journey. Let me ask you this. What would happen if you let go of your need for control? What if you stopped forcing things to happen and allowed them to unfold naturally? What if you trusted the process, trusted yourself, and trusted life itself? What if you let go of the need for everything to be perfect and allowed yourself to make mistakes, to fail, and to learn along the way? The truth is, letting go of control doesn't mean you give up on life. It means you stop fighting against it. It means you stop trying to force things into place and start allowing them to come to you. Letting go of control is not about giving up. It's about freeing yourself. And when you do, you'll find that life is far more beautiful than you ever imagined. You'll find that the unexpected moments, the ones you can't plan for or control, are often the most profound. So stop holding on so tightly. Let go of the illusion of control and allow life to surprise you. Because in the end, it's not about controlling everything. It's about living fully in the moments you can't control. Vulnerability. It's a word that most people shy away from. We're taught from an early age that vulnerability is weakness. We're told that to be strong, we must guard our hearts, keep our emotions hidden, and never let anyone see the cracks in our armor. We believe that to be seen as powerful, we must appear invulnerable. But what if I told you that vulnerability isn't weakness at all? What if I told you that true strength lies in embracing your vulnerabilities, in owning your imperfections, and in being willing to show the world your true self, flaws and all? The world tells us to be tough, to be unbreakable, to put on a mask and pretend that everything is fine when inside we're falling apart. But here's the truth. The strongest people are those who are willing to show their vulnerability. They are the ones who understand that true power doesn't come from hiding who you are. It comes from accepting who you are in all your rawness, in all your humanity. Vulnerability is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. Think about it. Every single human being has moments of weakness. Every single one of us has moments of fear, doubt, and uncertainty. We are all imperfect. But it's in these moments of vulnerability that we connect with others. It's in these moments that we show our humanity. And in showing our humanity, we create real, deep, and meaningful connections. Vulnerability is the bridge that connects us all. When you hide behind walls, when you keep your emotions bottled up, you're not protecting yourself. You're isolating yourself. You're cutting yourself off from the very thing that makes you human, your ability to connect with others. Vulnerability allows you to be seen. It allows you to be understood, to be heard, and to be loved for who you truly are, not the mask you wear. Now let's talk about fear. Fear is the enemy of vulnerability. We fear being judged, we fear being rejected, we fear being seen as weak or incapable. But here's the thing. Fear only has power when we try to avoid it. The moment you stop running from your fear, the moment you face it head on, you take away its power. And that's when vulnerability becomes your greatest strength. It's when you allow yourself to be seen, when you open yourself up to the world with all your flaws and insecurities, that you find freedom. Because vulnerability is not about weakness, it's about courage. It takes more courage to show up as your true self, unmasked and raw, than it does to hide behind a facade of perfection. We live in a world that celebrates success, achievement, and perfection. We are constantly bombarded with images of people who have it all together, who seem invincible, who never show their struggles. But here's the truth. No one has it all together. No one is invincible. We all face challenges. We all struggle. And we all have moments of doubt. The difference is that some people are brave enough to admit it. Some people are strong enough to be vulnerable. And those people are the ones who inspire us the most. They are the ones who remind us that it's okay to be imperfect, that it's okay to have flaws, and that we don't have to pretend to be something we're not. Think about the people who have impacted your life the most. Chances are, they didn't make their mark by pretending to be perfect. They made their mark by being real, by being open, by sharing their struggles and their victories alike. They made their mark by showing their vulnerability. Vulnerability is what makes people relatable. It's what makes people feel like they aren't alone. And when you make others feel like they aren't alone, you create a space for growth, for healing, and for connection. The irony of vulnerability is that it makes you stronger, not weaker. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you are giving yourself permission to be human. And being human is where your strength lies. It's not in pretending to be something you're not. It's not putting on a mask and pretending to have it all together. Your true strength lies in your authenticity, in being real, in showing up, imperfections and all, and still having the courage to stand tall, to keep moving forward, and to keep fighting for what matters most to you. We all have a story. We all have experiences that have shaped us, struggles we've faced, pain we've endured. But it's in sharing these stories that we find our strength. It's in being vulnerable that we open the door for others to do the same. When you share your truth, when you open your heart and let others see the raw, unfiltered version of you, you give them permission to do the same. Vulnerability creates a ripple effect. It inspires others to show their true selves, to let go of their fears, and to embrace their imperfections. But let's be clear, vulnerability is not about oversharing or airing your personal struggles to everyone who will listen. It's not about seeking sympathy or validation. Vulnerability is about authenticity. It's about being honest with yourself and others, about letting people in and showing them who you truly are, without the need for approval or perfection. Vulnerability is about courage. It's about owning your story, owning your emotions, and owning your journey, no matter how messy it may be. When you embrace vulnerability, you also embrace growth. You can't grow without vulnerability. Growth happens when you push past your comfort zone, when you allow yourself to be uncomfortable, when you face your fears head on. Growth happens when you allow yourself to be seen, even when it's scary, even when you don't know how others will react. Growth happens when you stop hiding and start living. Think about the times in your life when you've grown the most. Chances are, those were the times when you allowed yourself to be vulnerable, when you allowed yourself to admit that you didn't have all the answers, that you didn't know what the future held, but you showed up anyway. Vulnerability is what makes growth possible. It's what pushes you to take risks, to try new things, and to challenge yourself. Without vulnerability, there is no growth. And let's not forget about the strength that comes from vulnerability in relationships. True intimacy can only be built on vulnerability. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable with someone else, you give them the opportunity to do the same. You create a space for trust, for connection, and for deep, meaningful relationships. Vulnerability is what makes love real. It's what makes friendship authentic. Without vulnerability, there is no intimacy. So the next time you feel the urge to hide, to shut yourself off from the world, to keep your emotions buried deep inside, remember this. There is power in vulnerability. There is strength in being seen, in being honest, in being real. Vulnerability doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. And in a world that constantly tells you to hide your true self, there is nothing more powerful than showing up exactly as you are. Embrace your vulnerability. Embrace your imperfection. Because when you do, you'll discover a strength you never knew you had. And in that strength, you'll find the courage to live your life fully, to connect with others deeply, and to become the person you were always meant to be.